Hello and welcome to Horror Boys. It's a podcast on the internet. I'm Austin, joined as always by
Chris.
And Isaiah.
And we are the Horror Boys. This specifically is not just any podcast on the internet. This is a horror movie review podcast where once a week we review a horror movie. I know, crazy. And this week we are finishing out the Hatchet / Victor Crowley franchise because for some reason they decided to not call this Hatchet 4 and really ruin the what you call the franchise. I guess technically, even though it's only one movie that has this name in it, it should be called the Victor Crowley franchise because at least that character is in all of it. I don't know. I'm going to still call it the Hatchet franchise because those are the movies that I want to watch again.
Despite the fact that there's never been a Hatchet in any of them.
What are you talking about? There is the Hatchet trademark.
And literally a single one. Ever.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if the Hatchet world agrees with you. Like, not the the Hatchet world agrees with you, but the world we live in and the Hatchets that exist in it, I think don't.
Okay.
The tools themselves?
Yeah, the tools disagree.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
How dare you?
The tools and the fans of the tools agree with me.
The big Hatchet fans out there. Not the franchise, the tool.
The implements.
Yeah.
Hey, there's a lot of people who throw hatchets.
I still don't know if I describe them as Hatchet fans. That's a little weird.
The Hatchet fandom is pretty strong.
I'm big fans of just the hatchets themselves, I think.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
So the act of throwing them.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Well, you know who also likes to throw hatchets and or axes? Victor
Crowley.
So let's jump on in to our review of Victor Crowley.
Yeah.
We open in 1964.
For no reason at all, I would just like to add.
I mean, you're not wrong, but also like I feel like there are a lot to complain about in this, especially first 30 minutes of this movie. And don't get me wrong, I will, and I'll let you eviscerate it too. But right. I don't think having a flashback scene is something to at all care about. It's just a thing. It literally changes nothing.
Exactly.
I guess, if you wanted to really...
It doesn't add anything to the movie at all.
I mean, it doesn't, but it also...
It's like, here.
If you wanted to really grasp, you could say none of the other movies really started this way, so this one distinguishes it as what it really is a very different movie than previous ones. Sure. I think it's, for the better.
Yeah, well...
This intro scene distinguishes the movie as, why did we do this at all?
Yeah, because, boys, this scene rough, especially. Like I've already alluded to the first 30 minutes of this movie being rough. But this first scene is the roughest.
First 6 minutes.
Yeah. We open with Dell asking Sue to marry him. And then there's a bunch of snot humor.
Like, a lot of it.
Yeah. And, like, it's prolonged. Like, the snot and how long it takes. It's both a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She just gets really excited, and there's, like, a whole bunch of boogers that run down her face.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like teal boogers. It's not even like normal colored snot.
I mean, I didn't notice the color of the snot personally. I just saw it as snot. It was like, oh, great, we're doing booger jokes.
Well, since they bothered to put like a bunch of it, my brain could only help but fixate on it excessively. So
that's fair.
I was like, why is it? They didn't even.
Yeah.
And so that was, and then they kiss, and then
but before they even kiss, though, they're super loud. Sue is so loud and so annoying as she's trying to get him to just propose to her, as he's taking out of the moment because it's a booger joke, and that's where we're at in this franchise. Which at this point in this movie, I was so close to being like, maybe we just don't cover it this week. Like, it was rough. This scene made me go, I think, I told Chris this in a text, but it's legitimately true. There were multiple times, this joke I think might have been one of them, that I, while pausing the movie to write notes, yelled in anger that I was watching this movie. Because some of these scenes, and especially this first 30 minutes, because I will expound on what I mean by that, especially later, because, but yeah, it's just...
It's pretty terrible.
Yeah. Like you mentioned, there's the kiss, where now there's snot in both of them. And then, thank God, we hear a distant cry of daddy, so we can at least move on from this agonizing part of the scene. Don't get me wrong, it doesn't get much better, but it's still, we get away from this for a little while, which, this snot joke, man. Like, I was like, where's Jack Cracker drinking piss? Please give me that. That's how much I hated this.
Grossed you out that much. Dude, I gotta admit, like, I guess I'm not too good for a snot joke.
You know,
I thought, like, this scene landed a lot better than, like, the civilized jokes later in the movie. I'm not gonna lie. I dug the snot joke. I guess I'll admit that about myself.
This is Isaiah's last week on the podcast. We will miss him greatly. No, it's, hey, I mean, people have different senses of humor, and that's fine. But my personal experience with this joke was I wanted to kill myself.
I was immediately mad that I was watching Victor Crowley.
I think that might have also been part of what pushed me so much over the edge, was I knew for weird peek behind the curtain that isn't that necessary, but I'll expound so you can get to know us maybe a little better. Typically, me and Chris, we watch the movies together as I take notes, and like we have a communal experience watching the horror movies we watch for Horror Boys. Sick. Chris is sick. My brain is not even getting words out. Apparently, my brain is sick.
This is Rick.
Yeah, Chris is a little sick, so Chris did not come over today because I didn't want to get sick, and wanted to give him some rest. And so as I was watching this, and I knew I was watching it before Chris, I was like, oh my gosh, Chris is gonna whine about this movie so bad. Oh my goodness. Oh. And that was the more I thought as I was going, oh no, Chris is going to eviscerate this, and I can understand why. Oh no, stop it, movie, please get better. And I think it does, but it takes a while.
It does take its time getting there.
Yeah. So yeah, they hear the crying for daddy, so they run off. Dell thinks someone's hurt. Because, if you hear someone crying out daddy, you probably assume that something's wrong.
Yeah, a child somewhere is looking for their parent.
Exactly, so you want to go help. So he goes out to the swamp, and they run into in the movie, unnamed hunter. I believe in the IMDb, his name is Bernard. But he is our first random cameo of the movie. That's right, it's random horror cameo time. That was the I guess actor. He's an actor. Tyler Mane. Specifically, he's more of a stunt man typically, but he plays Michael Myers in the Rob Zombie Halloween remakes.
Huh.
Yeah. He's here for 10 seconds. When he showed up, I was like, oh, I guess is part of this movie going to be set in the 60s? Because I thought we were going to do more with this character. Because, typically when they bring in the random horror people, they have them be in a couple scenes to justify them being there. Not Tyler Mane. He just gets to die.
Yeah.
Because, he almost immediately after confronting them gets his head cut off. And as I wrote, and something that I will say is weirdly, once again, part of why I really hated this first 30 minutes, these first couple kills are bad.
They're super cartoony.
The way he cut off his head just looked so cheesy. I wouldn't even go cartoony. It just looked really cheaply done. There was no shot of the viscera at all. All you had was blood squirting out of a straight up body.
Hose.
Yeah, and it was that's not Hatchet. Which, to be fair, it's not. It's Victor Crowley. But also, it does get better in my opinion. Some of the kills. Some of these early ones, though, I'm really oh no.
Pretty much all the early ones are pretty terrible.
Pretty much, once again, the first 30 minutes of this movie feel like a different movie almost.
Dude, I'll give you that. It occurred to me halfway through, I thought this could probably be just better characterized as a comedy attempt.
Yeah.
So much more so than a horror movie.
Yeah,
even a horror
I would
comedy.
describe, and I guess we'll get to that here. I was going to save this more for my final bit, but like always, I always just reiterate things in the final bit because I always want to say it sooner. I feel like this is a tale of two movies. This first 30 minutes is in my opinion, as we've established, not to everyone, in my opinion, a piss-poor attempt at comedy. And then there's a pivotal point, spoiler alert, not really, because if you're listening to this, you don't care. Post that plane crash, this is a completely different movie. This movie is just a decent slasher movie. Is it the best slasher movie I've ever seen? No, by no means. But it is a completely passable, watchable, at times enjoyable slasher film. But you have to get through 30 minutes of really gross out, in my opinion, missed takes on comedy, and it's just, and I would even say, and the comedy, in my opinion, there's still comedy throughout that last half. I feel like it lands slightly better. Like, it's like, there's a character that when he's first introduced, I hated him. But then, as we get to know the character some more, I start to like him. Yeah, that's right. I'm talking about Dylan. Dylan's impressions are atrocious. But then we get to, like, the next scene after that, once the plane crashes and we see him, and he's, like, this fun, lovable idiot. And I'm like, this is, like, 2 different movies. Like, so much so. That's at least my thoughts. It gives me such a weird feeling about this movie, because I love slasher movies. Even a decent slasher movie, I enjoy the crap out of that. So I really enjoy the crap out of the second half of this movie. But I also wanted to gouge my eyes out during the first half. But more so my ears, because most of the jokes are verbal. But you get the point. Oh. And yeah, and the kills are bad too for some reason in this first section, which is why we got here before I got on my little soapbox. Apparently this week is my soapbox week. Last week, or not 2 weeks ago, was Chris's. So far Isaiah hasn't had one. I'm sure he will eventually. Or he won't. Maybe Isaiah's just more cool-headed.
He is the even-keeled character of the podcast.
I am? Oh, sweet. I'm not the even-keeled character on my work podcast, by any means.
Well, apparently that just shows that me and Chris are so far off the deep end. Yeah, so, yeah, then, where were we? Yeah, the special effects suck. Then Del gets something, then after he gets taken out, Del gets something shoved, I can't tell what it is, something is shoved through the back of his head through his eye. And once again, in a kind of okay special effect. Like, once again, I'm like, typically, like, when there's this much, like, something that crazy, like, there'd be, like, so much gore. Like, I think a great example is, like, how little blood is on, what's the other character? Sue's face. Like, there's, like, dribbles of blood, which is probably more realistic, but not what I want from a Hatchet movie.
Yeah, I mean, seriously.
Like, it's like almost no gore and just an eyeball sticking out. It's
very plastic.
It's a step above, very small step, a step above Friday the 13th Part 3, the eye 3D scene. Like, that's how poorly this is done. Like, and I think, if anything, the comedy, like we've established, the comedy hasn't always landed for me in this series. I didn't like the comedy in the second movie. The gore has always at least somewhat landed for me. So I was really disappointed in this first scene. Because it was
the thing is, well, it's not even that it looks like you can see the seams in it. No. You know, it's intentionally made to look just cheesy.
Yeah.
You know, like, the bodies are very rigid and obviously, you know, like mannequins, and
yeah.
There's no attempt at realism or over realism like you see in the last one.
Yeah.
You know, squishy heads or anything.
I would even argue not even the hyper cartoon. It wasn't even hyper cartoony even. I complained about the hyper cartoony stuff, but like we got like the one time the head got destroyed by the boat. Like, there was still gore there. It was stupid in my opinion, but it was still stupid fun. This was just stupid and felt cheap. This felt like a cheap B movie for especially these first 2 kills. I will even say
on purpose.
Yeah, maybe on purpose. I don't know. Maybe it was on purpose. For me, it just went like, oh, that's it. Which, if that was on purpose, that's a choice. I want to give them the benefit of the doubt that it was an accident somehow, because that at least goes, you made a mistake. If you did this on purpose, I don't understand you at all.
Well, I think it's either on purpose or just the camera quality is not consummate with the kill quality. Because the camera quality looks like it's the best. It's, you know, the best digital camera we've had in the movies so far in the series. But like, and so that makes it appear as like the presentation of the kills is really slick, but the kills themselves, they're bland.
Yeah. Once again, though, only for these first 2. I'd even argue Sue's kill is already a step above, and it just felt. And maybe they were trying to play devil's advocate. They're trying to, like, give you a false sense of, oh, well, see, we're not doing crazy kills. So when Sue gets her crazy kill, maybe it's supposed to be more impactful. I don't know. That's me theorizing. That might be me giving them too much credit.
Probably looking way too deep into it.
But I want to complain, Chris. You get to complain about things you get to complain about. I get my week. Okay, this is my week.
You can complain. I think you're just giving them a little bit too much credit.
I literally said that. I literally said I think I might be giving them too much credit.
Austin, I think you might be giving them too much credit.
Austin, I think you might be giving.
Wait, I'm getting a phone call. What? What's that? I'm giving them too much credit.
Oh,
It was Adam Green himself.
I think so. Say that.
I'm getting a phone call.
Can we stop this bit? It's going too long. It was me grabbing the phone was too much. You going for the phone is pushing the joke too far. Like we've.
All right, Isaiah has to grab the phone.
We're about to be.
He's in my bedroom.
We're about to be the pilot scene from a little bit. That's how too long we're going.
Oh, dude, that's a good point.
But yeah, first let's get to Sue's kill, because it is a little better. Crowley starts by cutting off her fingers, and then he starts just delimbing her. He chops off her limbs. We get like close-up shots as blood comes out, and then he cuts off her head. And then there's I actually say a really kind of pretty shot. I don't know, pretty slash. I like the shot. There is a moment where you see her ring finger with the wedding ring as blood pools around it. I was like, I respect the cinematography in that shot.
I think the delimbing part of this scene is probably one of the worst delimbings that we've seen, just based on like the way that he cut off her arms, and like it looked like to me the cut lines were like jagged for some reason. Like he had even though he cut her limbs off, and then it looked like he tore her limbs off. I was very confused.
It's fair.
Yeah, just it even this looks cheaper than the rest of the stuff that we've seen in the franchise. It's just disappointing.
Yeah, that's fair. I think that's completely fair. As I definitely was very disappointed in these first 30 minutes. We'll see if your opinion changes on the later hour-ish. Not even an hour. Let's be real. Like 50 minutes, if that, because this movie was short. Which
hour and 20 minutes?
Yeah, it was like an hour 20 minutes. And realistically, we keep saying the first 30, but it might have been closer to the first 40, which technically you could say is pretty much the first half. Yeah. But yeah, so now we're done with that. Actually, no, first we go to, after he decapitates her, we get a shot of him growling, just because, that's what we want. It's like very, like, not prolonged, but just long enough where I was like, okay, sure, he has growled before, but it still felt like, all right, okay, cool, he killed her, okay. Oh, and now it's a title card. And
this is the title growl.
Yeah. That is true. It's the title growl that he was saying, "I'm Victor Crowley." You had to slow it down to hear it. But yeah, and then I will say once again, a really cool shot I felt like was this little intro after that. It was the recap that was done with like kind of pictures and a little bit of video over a candle. And once again, it was pretty and like it was artistically. It felt like it was. I liked it. It felt really artistic, and we were kind of getting a recap on the franchise, which, to be fair, I don't need a recap, but some people don't watch these movies week after week to review them like we are, so I respect, at least if they're gonna give us the recap that every horror movie feels the need to give, they at least did it in a way that was artistically pleasing.
Thank you.
Now we're on a daytime TV show called The Sabrina Show. Woo, Sabrina Show!
Yeah.
With Andrew, who is the guest, and he is, our survivor from last time. He's still played by Perry Shen. He got to survive, finally, so he's in another movie. He's here. He's here, and we're finding out about, he has a new book that he took 10 years to write, which they don't really feel like they ever really explain. It does feel like kind of like they wanted to set this 10 years later, but even, they have like a throwaway line about like, oh, I started and stopped, but it was hard. I still feel like it was literally like, it's 10 years later because it has to be 10 years later. Like, that's why it's 10 years later. But, whatever.
Writing the book's hard.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, writing books are hard. And then we also find out that, which I think was their kind of reference to Perry Shen playing multiple characters. We find out that his DNA was on 2 of the victims, which is part of why they think he was definitely the murderer, because as part of the theory is that he was the murderer. That's why everyone thinks, like, well, how else would you have survived? And there's no such thing as Victor Crowley. But they do mention his DNA is on 2 of the victims. He's like, yeah, I don't know how that happens. But it's because
it's the mystery.
He's playing the same person, so he'd probably be related to them, I think is the joke here. I feel like that had to be what they meant by that, because why else would his DNA be on 2 victims?
Well, one thing that makes it hard, you got to really, like, get out of the microscope for these jokes, because they don't really decide very firmly if he's going to be a funny character or a dramatic character for like the lion's share of this movie.
That's fair. I still feel like that joke was definitely a reference to him being Perry Shen. Because, I don't know, I just felt like... Because it felt like that felt very poignant that they said your DNA was on 2 of the victims. Maybe, I mean, hey, this might be me giving it too much credit, but that feels like if that was the joke, it was a good joke. If it wasn't that, I don't know what they were going for.
I mean, you're definitely more observant than me, and I'm also kind of dumb, so maybe it is a joke, but that didn't occur to me until you brought that up.
You're definitely not dumb.
Now.
You definitely bring the most intellectual side to this podcast when you decide to. It's not every time, but you'll come in with like, and here's the theory behind why we take off the mask in movies, and I'm like, sure, that sounds right.
I like
He's definitely the most literarily versed.
Yeah.
For sure.
Thanks.
Yeah, so I'm not gonna let you crap on yourself, man. You're cool. We respect you. I know I don't respect your sense of humor because you like the snot joke, but I still respect you as a person.
I dug the snot jokes, dude. I seriously did. And I did not get... This joke did not jump out to me whatsoever.
You know, that's fair. And then, even though... What? Oh, yeah, so he was, you know... This is the whole point of this kind of scene is her, who we find out, I think in this scene, that his ex-wife, actually, that she, you know, it's kind of like, she thinks he did it, which I don't know why she would have ever married him then, but whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because she married him afterwards. That's part of, like, the thing. It's like, he's like, oh, yeah, we got married afterwards the first time I was on your show. Then we got divorced 2 years later. It's like, if you thought he was the murderer, why did you... Whatever, Sabrina.
That was part of his appeal.
Sure.
The serial killer appeal, you know.
I mean, that is a thing, unfortunately, in the day of our Lord 2022. But...
Well, this is 2017, and I'm grossed out by it. But also, she then still thinks he's a serial killer, but didn't want to be with him. So apparently it wasn't enough for her.
At some point, she changed her mind.
Yeah. But even though he was found innocent, and that's kind of how it ends. We find out that he's believed to... Some people... It's important because it's going to come up in a couple other scenes. People think he did it. Which, I guess, to be fair, if he's the only survivor... I could see why someone would think that. It's fair. Yeah. I mean, that's not a crazy jump in logic to think that. Then we head to a hotel room where we meet a couple, Alex and Chloe, who are going to be making a horror movie, which we find out a little later is supposed to be based off of the first killings. Ooh. Well, actually, first like 3 days.
Kind of cool,
the whole massacre, the 3 days, which is the first 3 movies. And as well as... we also meet their movie's makeup artist, who is Rose, who, once again...
played by an actress that I am familiar with.
Oh, you are?
I think.
Oh.
I don't know.
I wasn't familiar with her. But I also haven't seen everything you've seen. So, I will say one thing about this movie is, there are a couple actors I'll mention, hey, they are this person. But I would say 90% of these actors were actors I had never heard of, but when I went to their IMDb, they've been in like 30 crappy horror movies each. So I guess he ran out of, the big time horror actors, but still wanted to get people in the horror community to be in his movie. Because it felt like most of these actors had at least like 1 or 2 other horror roles. I know I said 30, but I was being over dramatic. Each one had at least a few horror movies that they were known for. So she specifically, I believe the reason she's in this one is because she's his friend who was in his sitcom Adam Green made, called like Holliston. You'll also see Holliston like sweatshirts throughout like the series as like a nod to his other show. But yeah. But I will say once again, this is feeling like 2 movies. Because I write here about this character of Rose is that she's insufferable. Because in this scene, I hated her with a passion.
Dude, yes.
And for like the first half of this movie, she's insufferable. But then post plane crash, she starts to get better. And I'm like, what is this movie? Why is there such a tonal change with like every character and part of it post that? I don't know. It's a weird choice. If it was a choice.
Like somebody wrote, like 2 different people wrote the first and second half of the movie.
But the thing is, it's all Adam Green. He's the only one who's written any of these 4 movies. But somehow each one of them feels like they're written by a different person. This one feels like it's written by 2 people.
5 years to write the first half of the movie, and then 5 years later he picked it back up and wrote the second half of the movie.
But yeah, I thought she was insufferable. And this is another thing that I normally wouldn't mention, because it feels weird to mention it. But we have her whole like introduction scene is a joke about her being naked, yet she's not shown to be naked. Like, the actress wasn't willing to do nudity. Like, there's no shot of boobs here, which, don't get me wrong, I don't need to see this actress's boobs. But if we're going to have a whole scene where she goes, they're just boobs, you probably should see her boobs. It just felt really weird to me that the whole scene, her whole part of the scene was her, like, not whole part, but a big part of her introduction was, like, her walking out naked and being like, oh, I'm naked, who cares? But then the actress wasn't willing to actually be naked, so it just felt like, why is that scene even there?
It's also really bizarre that, they only mention, like, oh, your boobs.
It's true. She just came out of the shower. She would be completely
She comes out of the shower, drops her towel, and is completely naked.
Sure, like, you're right.
In front of her two friends.
But once again,
they're just like, your boobs!
Yeah, exactly. It's just, like, I don't know, it feels weird to even mention this, because it feels like I'm, like, some perv who's like, I wanted to see her naked. I don't care. But just don't have this scene where you specifically go, my boobs, if you're not going to show your boobs. I don't know, it just felt really weird. It was jarring to me. I was like, oh, I guess we're not getting nudity in this movie? We're just going to reference nudity? Spoiler alert, there is some nudity later. But
this is a different Hatchet.
Yeah, there are two different types of nudity we see. Spoiler.
Yes.
Yeah.
Equal opportunity nudity.
Yep.
That's right. This movie is...
Yep. Yeah, so Rose is insufferable, and she's naked, but not really. Then we head to a scene... Then we end the scene with a joke about the Newberry Comics logo.
Yeah.
And his shirt, because he has a shirt that's a little wrong. He's like, oh, my bad. And there's like a picture of Ben wearing the Newberry Comics logo, and apparently this guy Alex was supposed to get a shirt that matched it. So that's
he's going to play Ben in the movie.
Yeah, so that's every movie we gotta reference the Newberry Comics logo. Which, here's the thing, I love it. I'm a New Englander. I get it. I feel a kinship with Adam Green for it. I understand it. But I actually thought this was one of the few jokes in this first part that I was like, oh, okay, that's all right. It wasn't like laugh out loud, but I was like, huh, all right. Huh, he got the shirt wrong. Okay, moving on. Now we head to Kathleen talking. Wait, no. Then we have a scene with. Oh, sorry, I was right, but we head to a scene with Andrew, and we meet his publicist, Kathleen, who is played by Felicia. I think it's Felicia. Felicia Rose. Felicia. That's the word. My brain couldn't remember that name. Felicia Rose, who is the lead character from Sleepaway Camp. She is she's Angela, the little girl in the first Sleepaway Camp. The one who is not a girl. Spoiler alert for Sleepaway Camp.
Yeah. Sorry if you haven't watched Sleepaway Camp, the movie from like the 1970s.
It's 1980. It's definitely mid-80s.
Early 1980s?
It's like, I think it might be mid, but I could be wrong.
84?
It might be. Yeah, it might actually even be 82. You might be right. It might be early 80s. It's in 80s. It's an early 80s to mid-80s slasher film where the whole big thing is that there's a little girl who kills people. But wait, she's not a little girl. And it's a weird twist. It's a movie. We're covering it eventually. But she's an actress who the horror community, once again, they love her because she goes to all the cons and stuff. So, of course, what a surprise. Adam Green got a horror person to be in his movie. It's not news at this point. It's just an Adam Green movie. But yeah. Yeah. And then we end this scene where we're meeting her with the classic old, let's make a racist joke. Because when in doubt, potty humor and racism. This joke implies that she doesn't realize that he's Chinese and she thinks he's Japanese. Because ha 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 ha, they're all the same, I guess, is what Adam Green thinks.
That's what she thinks.
But he's the one who wrote it. And, like, it's not played like we have this... Like, the last movie, we had Sid Haig's character of McMullen, who was racist because that was important to his character. Kathleen was racist because Adam Green thinks racist jokes against Asians are funny. That's why the last one had one, too. That last one did land a little better in the last movie. I thought it was kind of funny in the way they pulled it off in the last movie. But there was a racist joke in that movie, too. Apparently, that's just Adam Green's sense of humor. Which...
I mean, just to bat for him, are we sympathizing with Sean or with the publicist in this scene? Like, obviously,
it's not Sean. Sean is the character from the first movie. Now,
I'm sorry, Andrew.
It is Andrew Young.
Yeah.
Famous Andrew Young.
I've been calling all three of them Sean since Sean was introduced.
That's fair.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're fine. It didn't. I just feel like if you want to feel the need to put a character be racist, it needs to be poignant. And I don't feel like there was ever a moment where he put her in her place or anything. Like there was never a come-upsmanship from him. I don't know. I didn't like it. But hey, to each their own. Then we head to the book signing. Woo! Yay! This is where the humor starts hitting. Oh, no. There's a lot of weird jokes in this scene.
Yeah.
One of the first people we meet at the book signing is Christina with a K, who flashes her boobies. And she wants Andrew to sign them. One of them to her, and one to her dad. Ha ha ha.
Bill with a B.
I mean, I don't... Sure, yeah, I guess the joke was slightly funnier when she said his name, but it was still one of those moments where I was like, wait, why are we... ew, I don't want to... Why is she having her boob signed for her dad? That's gross. It's stupid, gross humor. I just want better than that, because I really felt like the first Hatchet was better than this. I felt like the third Hatchet was a little better than this, at least. This movie just... Especially, once again, I keep saying this movie, but like I've established... the first 30 minutes of this movie, because I really feel like it's two different movies. Yeah. Also at the signing, we start by hearing, while we cut back and forth between the Chloe, Alex, and Rose, and Andrew signing with people, and we kind of find out officially that this is, her plan is to get Andrew to be in the movie, and how the movie is specific. I think this is the line where we specifically find out about how it's about the killings, like it's alluded to by the pictures earlier when we see the Newberry comics.
Missing photo, missing
picture, the missing photos of all the previous cast members. Well, mostly just the first movie's cast members, actually.
And here they're just real people.
Yeah.
For the sake of this movie.
Yeah, because this is all the same world. So this is still in the world of Hatchet. So this is all happening to them.
A little meta theater. Yeah.
Then we get a cameo from David Foy, who, that name doesn't mean anything to most people, and that's fair, because it doesn't mean anything to me either. I just wanted to give the actor credit for being here. He is from Hatchet 2. In that movie, he was playing the character Chad, and this movie, he's back playing his brother Skip, and he's mad at Andrew, and he's here, because I guess he's friends with, Adam Green.
Adam Green.
Because, here's the thing, this joke wasn't offensive. It just did nothing for me. I was just like, okay, his brother's here yelling at him, and he's played by the same actor. Cool.
Like, we've seen this gag already.
Yeah, that's the whole joke with Andrew.
Andrew,
Perry Shen's whole joke is he's the same.
Yeah.
What's
the same actor from the previous movie.
Okay, cool. We got Chad back as Skip, and his person he's with, I don't know if it's his girlfriend, his mom, I don't know, the female he's with is really creepy as well, and then they leave, because it literally was just there, that he was just showed up to, they're just trying to show all the different people he's signing with. I get it. It's literally there to kill time. I do get that. But I was also like, what? Okay, cool, he's here. Then we get a scene where a guy wants Andrew to sign his penis. And he then says that if he doesn't do it, he's a homophobe. Because he saw him sign the girl's boobs. Cool.
There's just blatant dongage on screen.
Yeah, and it's, from my understanding, a real penis. Because I did see, in the... Take this with a grain of salt, because I could not find any interviews or anything. But in IMDb trivia, they quoted an interview with Adam Green saying that he specifically wanted this joke in there as a send-up of how we always have female nudity, but never male nudity. You made a joke about how equal opportunity. That was really the whole point of this. He wanted to be like, hey, we're showing a penis too. Which, I guess, fair, but it's also just once again, it felt like a low-hanging fruit joke to make about, low-hanging fruit because of balls. But no, it felt like a low-hanging fruit joke to make a homophobic joke again. At this point, this movie's from 2017. Maybe we don't joke about trying to get people canceled for being homophobes when that's a real thing people who are gay actually have to deal with. Maybe we don't use that as a punchline for a sign my penis joke. Maybe don't do a sign my penis joke. That's just me. But if you really want to do it, don't use that for the big punchline to be, if you don't do it, you're a homophobe. It's cool.
Yeah, it was kind of funny.
this might be Isaiah's last podcast.
That's deserved.
And then now all the random weirdos are done because we're getting Chloe, Alex, and Rose, but I guess they're at this point still just weirdos because it's the first half of this movie, so they're written terribly as well at this point because everyone is written terribly for this first half, except for Andrew. I will say Andrew is written okay throughout the whole movie. He's the only character that Adam Green felt like he cared about, apparently, in this whole movie, for the whole movie at least.
Well, we can talk about that.
Okay.
Almost the whole movie.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah.
We'll get to that when we get to that. I don't specifically remember what you're talking about, but that's fine. I'm looking forward to hearing what you mean. Ooh. Stick around, listener. Now, this is where we go to an ad read if we had ad reads.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't have ad read stuff, so.
But yeah, Chloe and them get up there, just get up to Andrew Chloe starts telling him about her plan to make a movie based off the Crowley murders, and then Andrew gets pulled away from the signing. I will say a little fun fact about part of what she was saying there. One of the things Chloe mentions is, like, I think it might have even been Alex who mentioned it specifically. Excuse me. Their plan was that they were in Louisiana right now. The plan was to shoot this mock trailer to try to make some buzz to get funding. The fun fact is, that's exactly how they made the first Hatchet.
Are you kidding me?
They went out, they made a trailer, because as we established in that first Hatchet, if you turning into this episode the first time for us, Adam Green had this idea for Hatchet / Victor Crowley since he was 8. Like, the lore of Hatchet Face / Victor Crowley since he was 8. So they did a trailer that's like just some swamp footage, and I believe his daughter, who was like 5 at the time, reading, and she couldn't even read at the time, but they would like tell her a line and then she'd say it, of like a script of like kind of like the Victor Crowley legend, and they have that like with a creepy kid voice because it was just a little kid who was reading that over just a footage of the swamp. And they put that out there, like, on Reddit or something. I don't know if Reddit was around in 2005. But they put it on the internet. I don't know where they put it on the internet, but they put it out there. I think specifically one of the websites that picked it up was Bloody Disgusting, which was a big horror website that I'm sure still exists. But they kind of picked it up, and it kind of blew up, and people were like, oh, we want to see this movie. And they ended up getting, like, some funding because of that. So that's the joke here, which, to be fair, if you didn't watch the making of Hatchet, you probably wouldn't know that. Or if you were, like, a really big into the horror fandom and was on, like, horror websites in 2005, you might know that's part of the story. But, yeah, I thought that was a cool little thing here where they have these characters wanting to do what Adam Green and his producers did back in the day.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Ooh, where are we?
Making a horror trailer.
Yeah, horror trailer. What?
No, I don't think we're there yet.
There we are. The show that... Shut up. The show that Kathleen... We then find out what, like, Kathleen pulled Andrew away for, and it's that she booked him on the show, which is going to be an interview for a show called Real Crime Story that will interview him at Honey Island Swamp, which Andrew absolutely has no desire to do, because why would he want to go back to the place where he barely lived? That's a weird thing to want someone to have to do. It's fair. But she eventually is able to convince him by telling him that she was able to get $1 million secured. She didn't. Spoiler alert, because I don't remember if I actually wrote it down when it happened. I don't remember if I did, so we'll mention here. We find out later. I don't remember if I wrote it down, so we'll say it here. There is a point where we find out that he actually was only going to ever get $15,000, so all of this was for literally nothing.
Oh, that was for $15,000.
He wasn't willing to do it for $600,000, Chris.
Yeah.
He was still walking away when Kathleen said, they wanted to offer $600,000, and he kept walking. And then she's like, but I got him up to $1 million. And also, I don't know if she's actually
bada bing, bada boom.
From New York, but she definitely is doing a New York accent throughout this whole movie. And as you know, Chris likes to crap on people for slipping accents. I never noticed her slipping her accent, so good for her.
Me neither.
Like,
yeah.
She rocked a New York accent. I don't know why she was doing one. And I would even argue maybe it was a kind of bad one, maybe. But she was consistent with it at least. That was her character's voice for that movie. And sure. Maybe that's really what she sounds like. I don't know. I don't know a lot
I'm about to find out
about Felicia Rose. But yeah, so she convinces him with the $1 million pitch. So now we cut to the plane. And Kathleen says that Honey Island Swamp is full of a bunch of morbid tourists now, and how there's nothing to worry about. And then she ends it with saying that the world is very broken now, before then pulling out a bunch of drugs. Like, you name the prescription drug, she has it. And
in like a cookie tray.
Yeah.
Like a cookie compartment, lunchable looking thing. Yeah.
And she offers some to Andrew, who's very nervous, but he says no. Before she pops one saying, and this is a line I really loved, she says, "I get migraines when I do things." Because at first I was like, oh, she's going to say, like, I get migraines when I fly or something like that. Like, no, she's just a drug addict. And I thought that was hilarious.
When I do anything.
Yeah, it was when I do things. That was
also,
the first, at least at this point, the only time where I actually laughed in this movie. I do believe there are a couple points later, but I believe it's in my notes here, is like, that's the only joke that's landed for me so far. Because at this point, that's where we were. I was like, this is it. Okay, cool. I'm going to get one joke. Cool. Time to get through the rest of this movie. Because here's the thing. As we've established, the plane is still in the air, so I don't like the movie yet.
Also, yeah, as I suspected, Felicia Rose is born and raised in New York.
That makes sense.
Yeah, born in Manhattan, New York, and graduated from New York University. So.
Okay, so she did not do any accent work. She's just a New Yorker.
She is just a New Yorker through and through.
And then we cut. Then we get a cameo. I was saying we cut, but we don't cut yet. We get a cameo from Joe Lynch, who is a director of some stuff. We've mentioned him before. He was in one of the other Hatchet movies as a guy who got his jaw ripped off. In a cuts in like the flashing scene where they did all the kills in I think 2. He's a director. What is he most known for? Wrong Turn 2, I believe, is one of his bigger directorial outings. As well as Adam Green. Joe Lynch is playing the co-pilot, and Adam Green is the pilot. So I guess he's no longer a drunk, or it's a different character. I like to believe the man got his life together after being in jail that one night, and he's a pilot. He got his pilot license, so good for Adam Green's character. Yeah.
Beautiful character.
Then we find out that Sabrina is on the flight. Ooh.
Yeah.
Then we get
reasons.
Quite possibly a running, at least in my mind, for one of the worst jokes I've ever heard. Which is not even a specific joke, but a bit, I guess. It is the prolonged pilot announcement bit. All voiced by Adam Green in a very and here's our information. And then it just
monotone
keeps
pilot pause.
And he'll stop. People start doing their thing again, and it starts up again. And maybe that would have been funny if they did it 3 times, but they did it like 6 or 7. I didn't keep track of the exact number, but they just kept doing it. To be fair, I can't even say it's the worst bit I've ever seen, because that would still always and forever be chicken biscuit, and gravy. But this is a close second.
It's a pretty solid second.
Oh boy, was I like, oh my gosh, what is going on?
Also get introduced to like the rest of the
I was going to say that here, because a lot of them we don't get their names yet. But I will just say kind of the other characters we meet here on this plane are Jay, who is, I don't believe his name is ever even mentioned, but he is the makeup artist. We also meet Zach, who, is he an intern?
He's a red shirt, that's what he is. But yeah.
But like, they call him something. They call him something. I don't remember what it was. It wasn't intern. They call him like, and it's not like newbie. They call him like something specific where I was like, feels like a weird name for that. I don't remember what it was.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
Maybe it's something that's like a real thing in like the entertainment world. I want to believe that Adam Green, who's been in entertainment forever, would use the right term here. You know? But Pledge. It was Pledge. They kept calling him Pledge.
Is that like from fraternities?
Yeah, I thought that's like a pledge is something who's like, pledge is someone in a fraternity trying to get into a fraternity. I guess maybe that's something that the entertainment industry does as well, because they're this weird fraternity mindset. I don't know. But Zach's here. He's literally, we find out he's a pledge, and then he dies. So, but his name is Zach. We also meet Casey, who is someone here who is in a relationship with our next character we meet, Austin. That's really all we know about Casey.
Well, we learned that she is a camera op.
Lighting, she's the camera op. You're right. You are right. But it doesn't matter because they never film anything. But and then we also meet Austin, who is the sound guy.
An Impractical Joker.
Yeah, he is. I believe his real name is Brian Quinn. I saw someone else in a review call him Q from Impractical Jokers. As someone who's never watched Impractical Jokers, maybe that's what he goes by. But the second I saw him, I was like, that guy's that guy. Well, I recognize that guy, and I looked him up. I was like, oh. And Chris was also worried when he saw him in this movie, because you're like, that guy's not an actor. Why is he here? Is this just some... And I will say, I'll give the Brian Quinn, who plays Austin, credit. He doesn't do anything that, like, wows me, but he also does nothing wrong. Like, he is just here. The second I saw Impractical Joker here, I was like, oh no. How bad is this? Are we getting another Tom? Are we getting another Tom Holland? Are we getting another Uncle Bob? But no, we didn't. Austin is not an Uncle Bob. He is just here.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Like, Impractical Jokers had been running for 6 years by the time this movie was...
Yeah.
So it was definitely...
I actually... That was once again IMDb trivia, and I didn't write it down because I didn't
Impractical
care.
Jokers.
But specifically, I believe Adam Green was a big fan of Impractical Jokers and wanted him because of that. But he did a good job, so... That could have went very badly.
Adam Green even less now that I know he's a fan of Impractical Jokers.
I mean, I guess that's fair. I mean, a lot of people like Impractical Jokers. I'm not going to crap on everyone who likes a TV show.
I will.
I mean, yeah, but we've already established you are very high and mighty sometimes when it comes to the entertainment you enjoy.
What?
But yeah.
I good my news.
Then we head to Chloe, Rose, and Alex, who are at the Swamp Tour, and we have comedy ensue, because once again at this point I didn't really feel like a lot of the jokes super landed. There's some jokes about like Hatchet face merch and like, oh, who would buy that? Like, and then there's a joke that Rose would. Like, it's kind of there. As well as in this scene, we meet Dylan, who is a wannabe actor tour guide, who is played by Dave Sheridan, who is best known for his work in Scary Movie, which once again scared me. I was like, great. We have some guy who's known for Scary Movie in the role here. Like, Scary Movie, as we've established before, is kind of... We mentioned it when you were talking about some character you didn't like in Freddy vs. Jason, how they were in one of the Scary Movies, and how... And he felt like he was playing a character from that. Like, I was really worried that this was going to be a crappy actor who's good at playing crappy comedy kind of thing. Because I did figure out when I was a kid, I liked Scary Movie, but looking back, it's a bunch of, like, first 30 minutes of this level humor. And I personally have moved past that level of humor. Some people haven't, and we still love Isaiah anyway.
Thanks.
Yeah, I still love you. Yeah. I say I love you.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, he in that movie, in Scary Movie, he plays the killer / Doofy, which might be a spoiler for Scary Movie that Doofy is revealed as the killer. I don't remember Scary Movie, but Doofy is their Dewey parody, where he's, once again, probably a joke that definitely doesn't age well. I'm pretty sure he's playing a character with special needs, and that's like the whole bit, is he's a special needs cop. I could be wrong, but that's what I remember from... I'm pretty sure his character wasn't that. But yeah, and this is that first scene we talked about earlier, where he just does a bunch of crappy impressions of actors. They weren't that funny. The funniest one, which I guess I'll give credit. It still wasn't fun. That funny was the Christopher Walken one, where he goes, it's a really bad Christopher Walken, where he said, "Hi, I'm Christopher Walken." Do you know who that one was? It's like, okay, I might have I might have smirked at that one. Like, none of these made me laugh, but that one might have got a smirk out of me. And at this point I was like, this is going to be the worst character in this movie. He's from Scary Movie, and this is his opening scene. But spoiler alert, once that plane crash happens, he becomes one of my favorite characters in the movie. Because this whole movie
seriously
changes. Yeah. Like, I know I keep harping on it, but it's so true how tonally different everything is from the second that plane crashes. Like, I'm not going to say everything after that plane crash is good, because it's not. It's still a slasher movie, and it's going to still have some slasher tropes. If you don't like slasher movies, there's still going to be a lot to crap on the second half of this movie for. But it does the slasher stuff well. I think the comedy starts landing a little better, and it baffles me that you could have that first 30 minutes and that last 50 minutes and be the same movie made by the same writer and same director. It's like, I don't understand how he could have such a difference there.
Well, I think we're so used to in slashers and in the Hatchet included, having these characters that are so static. And I mean, that's not necessarily bad. You know, that's kind of the form that we're used to, where we get introduced to these people and we get to know them, but they generally remain the same, except for maybe there's a character that learns something new by the end of it. You know, they become more grave and introduced into the secrets of the voodoo or whatever. You know, and in this one, like, so many of the characters are dynamic.
I mean,
like Rose and Dylan, and I mean,
I see what you're saying, but now
I'm starting to think about it from like a literary point of view.
Okay.
And now I can think of a defense for why the movie's so different before and after the plane crash.
Okay.
Except for Andrew Young. It's because he's already been through all this before.
Yeah.
And so his character's kind of already hardened. Whereas, you know, none of the other characters have had to live through this, like, trauma. And after the plane crash, there is a literal tone change where everyone is, like, suddenly kind of getting onto the same page.
All right, I stand at the point where I agree that might have been genius. I just wish I didn't hate everyone and everything in those first 30 minutes. The tonal change is fine. Make it a slapstick comedy that turns into a horror movie, but just do it well. And that's
totally fair.
And here's the thing. Some people might like it. Like, I know I'm joking about it, but Isaiah liked some of that comedy, and that's completely fine. But like I feel like I felt like it was very childish humor, which I guess is, to be fair, this is a series where we crapped on the piss humor from the first movie. So maybe I was just expecting too much from him because he didn't have a full 30 minutes to only do a comedy before. And I'm now learning I definitely don't want to watch his sitcom because it's going to be this. Like, I like sitcoms, but I'm probably now never going to watch Adam Green's sitcom because I have a feeling this is going to be the type of comedy I get because that's what he likes. And you know what? To each their own. But we're about to crash this plane, which means I'm about to stop crapping on this movie. So let's keep on trucking.
No.
Now we cut to a scene on the plane. As they, it's actually scenes, because we kind of cut back and forth here, between scenes of them prepping Andrew for the shot, because they want to get a shot of him, like, looking out the window at Honey Island Swamp as they come in. And we cut back and forth with that, with Chloe's crew starting to shoot their trailer for their movie, as their plan is to say the actual curse that did the thing, which... Let's just start with the biggest, I'd say, flaw with this whole piece of the story is, how would anyone know that curse? Like, I know there's a mention later, like, the one person who's actually able to do it right, like, there's a big payoff joke that it's Reverend Zombie who's the only person who's actually competent, and he's the one who actually causes the stuff to happen. But how would Reverend Zombie even know the exact voodoo curse that happened? No one was there except for Thomas Crowley, who wasn't saying squat to anyone.
Right.
I mean, I guess you could go off of I guess typically speaking, I mean, I don't know for sure, but maybe voodoo curses are things that are, like, passed down in the voodoo community, and there are...
Like a voodoo
they just got books.
Yeah, well, I mean, I believe at the time...
Oh, that's the Victor Crowley curse right there.
I'm pretty sure, especially, I mean, fine, maybe it's a book, maybe it's a oral history, I don't know if voodoo was ever... They were writing books about voodoo to each other, I don't know. But either way, maybe all the curses are supposed to be the same, or at least in this world, all the curses can be. But I don't know. It just felt it really was there so we could make jokes later. Some jokes later that actually I thought were kind of funny about YouTube. Like, that's why it's here. They were watching videos on YouTube of this curse, probably so they could write a joke later, and just some reason to bring Victor back. They made a perfect trilogy in my mind. I know there's peaks and valleys, but most trilogies have peaks and valleys. Even the ones people tout as being the greatest, like, trilogies ever have peaks and valleys.
Star Wars 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah.
The perfect trilogy.
The prequel trilogy is the greatest trilogy to ever exist. We all know it, but let's be honest, the Revenge of the Sith kind of is a little boring. It's not as fun. There's no Jar Jar in that. How bad was that movie? That's a pretty big valley for me.
A Jar Jar-less movie.
Yeah. Well, he has one line. The best line in the movie. I don't remember what it was, but he does. He is in like one scene. But this is not a Star Wars podcast. Yeah, and I mean, I guess you could call episode 1 a horror movie, so maybe we'll cover it later. I'm kidding.
Scary aliens.
It's a joke. The joke was that it was so bad that I'm scared of it. But yeah. So yeah, they're finding out trying to use the exact curse that was used, and yeah. And then we get a scene back in the plane where it gets picked up by the sound equipment. And at first when I was first watching the movie, I was like, oh, and then that is that the reason the plane crashed, because of the curse? But I will say, at rethinking it, no. The reason the plane crashed was established in that god-awful joke earlier, that the reason they were slow to take off was because of the bad right engine.
And they just decided it'll probably be all right. And
I mean, I guess you could also say maybe it's up in the air. Maybe there is still an element of, why else did they pick up the curse up there if it wasn't... maybe the curse was still part of why they crashed, but it also might have just been that their engine was bad. Yeah. Then as they start to crash, Zach falls out of the plane, and he burns up on his way down. Yeah, and
sucked out of the window.
Yeah, he flies out the window, and he crashes.
I don't know if he burns up on the way out so much as like he gets degloved by the glass of the window.
I mean, maybe somewhat as
well,
by
the window.
But he is also literally like, his face is ash.
He looks pretty toasted,
yeah,
dude.
Like, there is some sort of fire. Maybe he hit the burning engine. Like, I don't know exactly what.
That's it.
It could be that, but
maybe.
He is definitely burnt when he lands.
Well, what happens initially is that like the plane starts to like go out of control, and what's his name? The makeup artist?
Yes, the makeup artist Jay.
He goes into a door.
Yes.
And we just see his legs.
We don't know what's up with him yet. He's dead. He's dead. Spoiler: he is dead.
That's the door now.
Yeah. So Zach falls down right in front of the crashes in front of the movie crew, and then the pilot, co-pilot, and Jay are also killed in the crash. Specifically, as we mentioned, how Jay hit. But yeah, then who is this? Also crashed in the crash is what I wrote. All right, that was a choice.
Yeah, the plane crashes after the body hits the ground.
Yeah.
And then Dylan's like, I think that was the sound of a plane crash.
Which, he was right.
Yeah. He's got a keen ear.
Is that before or after he, like, checks the pulse of the charred corpse?
After he
does check the pulse. And it might have been about that point where I realized, maybe I don't hate Dylan. Because you know why? Because the plane has crashed, and now the movie isn't bad.
It's good, yes.
But yeah. Then I wrote this here, but I don't think. Then I think at this point, this is when as Dylan gets to the plane, and he helps Andrew. Andrew first helps Austin, Sabrina, and Kathleen out of the plane. Wait, what? No, Dylan helps them, and Rose. My notes here got rough, but Dylan and Rose show up. They start helping them off the plane. We get the discovery that Jay is cut in half. We also get the discovery that the pilots are dead. That's really the gist of it. Yeah. My notes got confusing there, but that's what happened. But yeah. And then we cut back to Chloe and Alex, who decide that they're, don't want to be out there alone, so they start to head to find the others. And then we see a quick cameo this is where we see the cameo of Tony Todd's Reverend Zombie saying the curse, and then we start seeing some bubbling in the swamp. Presumably, this is when the spirit of Victor came back, was when Reverend Zombie said it, I think. Or it was the repeated of the curse. I don't know, but I took it as, Reverend Zombie's the one who actually knew voodoo, not all those weirdos in their mom's basement, as I believe Rose calls them later. But yeah, Tony Todd, the godsend who is Tony Todd, did make a brief 10-second appearance on a phone. So thank you, Tony Todd. We will miss you.
Okay, I was wondering if that was him, because his face is like...
He's in the credits, and it did look
definitely
enough
the most
like him.
Old man recording.
Because it probably was.
Yes.
They probably said, "Hey,
like the worst
hey Tony, can you record on your phone for us?" He's like, and he's like, "Yes." I can't do a Tony Todd voice, but you get the point. Like, he's deep voice, and he's like, "I will record it," And then he records it, and it's there. It's in the movie. But yeah, then we get to everyone on the plane. The plane crew, as we'll call them now. It's the crew minus Chloe and Alex at this point, because they're still out. And we hear a cry of "Daddy." Ooh. And then Andrew starts freaking out, getting everyone back on the plane because they'd all gotten off the plane. He's like, no, we all have to get back. Well, they got everyone at that point except for Casey off the plane because Casey is trapped. Casey will be trapped until she dies. Spoiler.
It is hard to watch.
It really is. We will get to that scene when it happens, but yeah, we will. I want to give it the due when it makes sense in the plot. But yeah, that scene. But yeah, Andrew freaks out and he gets everyone back in the plane after pulling his knife out, I believe, for the first time. And he starts threatening Dylan with the knife, and then we get back on the plane, and they wonder if they're safe on the plane because the door's closed now. But Andrew says probably not because of Crowley's belt sander. And then we get a really funny editing joke, which was something I love. It's I believe Friday the 13th, Part 6, Jason Lives had some of the best editing jokes I've ever seen where you'd cut between moments that the characters don't know are happening, but it's hilarious for the audience.
Surely they wouldn't leave a belt sander in the same place for 10 years.
Yeah.
And then immediately we cut the belt sander on a table.
Yeah. It's on like a table. I would imply that I think that this kind of little area is kind of like a recreation of his
lair.
His lair with like some props to maybe like fit the theme. At least that's what I thought. And because it's a gas-powered belt sander, I'm going to say that definitely is what it is. But then there's also just a random hammer hanging. So maybe it's just a work shed that happens to have a gas-powered belt sander, and that's a thing in this world. I'm not sure which one we're supposed to be. I don't know if this is a... But there's lights on the outside that kind of... I think this is supposed to be like a place you go while you're on the tour.
On the tour. Yeah. They've got a little plaque.
Yeah,
I
feel like the hammer fell out of place. But it's needed for a kill, so I guess it had to...
They tossed it in
to
make it look real.
Sure. Now it looks like a tool shed. Ooh.
Oh.
Ooh. Spooky. But yeah, so yeah, we're at the Rose. Wait, there we go. I said Rose said it wouldn't be there. We cut there, and Alex and Chloe are hiding in that little museum exhibit style shack with the belt sander, where there's a gag about the motion sensor, which I do believe was established in a scene prior to this that I didn't even mention because literally nothing happens. But this is where we kind of keep talking about this motion sensor, and there's kind of like see, there's nothing out there. Motion sensor goes on, motion sensor goes off. And then I will give this movie full credit where it deserves. They did a jump scare with Victor Crowley that I knew was coming because of the way they were setting up, but it still got the crap out of me.
Yeah.
It also got me.
It was so perfect. Like, credit, like, all the credit in the world. Because I was like, okay, yeah, it's going to happen probably on, like, the third one. And then it still happens on that. It's not like they do, like, an extra one to make you wait.
On the third one.
It's exactly where I was like, it's going to happen on the third one. It happens on the third one, and I, like, and it's like, okay, cool. All right, movie. You got me. But yeah, Victor tackles Alex down, grabs that random hammer, and obliterates his face.
It like turns it to the
first
like,
he like
crying side.
That's after. First he like you're right. He does hit him with that side first for a while, and then he like flips it and uses that to pull off his head. And once again it's that halfway point, which this should be the last time I bring it up. But the first kill after that halfway point. It was beautiful again. It
feels like a Hatchet movie.
It feels nice and mushy. It's that beautiful disgustingness that I want from a Hatchet kill. Not a Hatchet trademark kill with his weird double-sided axe thing. No, a Hatchet the movie kill. Gotta make sure I'm clear, because there are also Hatchet trademark kills in the Hatchet franchise, and those are different. But yeah. Then as this is happening, Chloe gets a chance to run away, and she screams as she runs away. Then Crowley rips off his head, and he grabs his Hatchet trademark. It's the what he uses as a hatchet. It's trademark. It's not what you would call a hatchet, but it is the Hatchet trademark that Victor Crowley likes to use.
If it's short, it's a hatchet in my opinion. If the handle's like this,
you can be wrong.
Yeah.
Maybe I truly might
be. The random guy on YouTube who seemed like he definitely knew what he was talking about when he reviewed this movie, he seemed like a big burly man who would know what a hatchet was, and I was like, he was very certain that this is not, so I will take his word for it.
There is, unfortunately, no such thing as a double-sided hatchet. Also, a hatchet has a very like significant curve at the bottom, where it like carries on the edge.
So,
are you sure that's a tomahawk?
I'm sure.
I mean,
Tomahawk's used specifically for throwing.
All right,
but the point is,
sure.
It is a hatchet, I guess, or not. We're gonna call it a hatchet. I'm gonna probably call it hatchet trademark for the rest of this video because I think that's funny. But it's the axe. It's his double-sided axe. It's the hatchet on the cover of the first movie, hatchet in quotes. But yeah, it's that. But yeah, then we cut back to the plane as everyone continues to freak out and try to see. And then they have this little discussion about trying to see if anyone has a phone. But they kind of aren't having any luck at this point. Before Chloe shows up outside and is then kind of walks her way up to the door, but before she's able to get there, Victor smashes her head through the window of the plane, which is right after a discussion on how they can't break the plane windows. I believe even Dylan tries to kick it and it won't break, which is just showing how strong Victor Crowley is plane windows aren't supposed to break, yet he's able to break them constantly.
That's true.
He's
a very strong man.
Which, here's the thing. In any other movie, you go, that's a lame thing. But with Victor Crowley, I'm like, that makes sense. He's Victor Crowley. Victor Crowley can do that.
Also, at this point, we're thinking like, okay, so Chloe is not the final girl.
Yeah. Well, she's not.
I guess.
Spoilers, she's still not.
Yeah.
But she's
they
not. They
kind of made her seem like she would, but...
Yeah. She's a red herring. Yeah, I like a red herring final girl. It's nice.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
But yeah, so she gets her head smashed through, and then after that, Crowley kind of just takes her up to... I think that might be a little bit later, actually. Sorry, as this happens, we get one of our first shots where we really see how the water is starting to rise, which is putting Casey in more danger, as well as her unborn baby, which is something we find out, I think, at some point we find out she's also pregnant, which, spoiler, just makes it all more depressing what's going to happen to her.
Yeah. That's so preventable.
Yeah, well...
Yeah, just don't say she's pregnant.
Oh,
there's that,
Oh.
I mean, I would argue that it really was. They established they tried to get her out, and they could not get her out.
Yeah.
I did not like Andrew in that scene when he discouraged him from leaving the plane.
I mean...
Personally. I liked him even less when he's like, well, I guess we got to leave the plane now, like minutes later.
I mean, I'll give you the hypocrisy of changing it, but I would argue Andrew's point of view made sense. He is, like we've already established, he's the only person who's been through this. He knows that if they go out there, especially at the time they really started noticing this and we kind of want him to go out here, is when he's like, no, this is a trap. He wants you to go out there. So, I mean, and he ends up being
reasonable,
right. But yeah, then everyone finds out. Also, at this point, we have him kind of... Sorry. And then we cut back to the plane after... No, I'm sorry. I jumped a little too far. Then Crowley drags away Casey's body and leaves her on a hill that's an eye shot of the plane. As we cut back to the plane, and Casey reveals that she... And then this is the point where Casey reveals to everyone that she's pregnant. And Andrew just doesn't care, and no one really cares. Actually, there's a whole joke about how no one's gonna say anything. All
right.
Which, to be fair, it is a weird time to bring it up from her. I mean, I guess she's trying to be like, hey, it's really precedent to save my life. I have an unborn baby as well. But there's still also an element of like, what did she expect? Like, I mean, I guess maybe a little bit more like, oh no, but like this, I don't know. It felt like her desired reaction made no sense either.
Especially with the timing of everything happening.
Yeah.
A little bit more pressing matters.
Around this time, Andrew tries to formulate a plan on what to do next. And around this point, we find out, due to one of the things he says, that he had lied about his book. And everyone's kind of like, oh, what? You liar.
You didn't kill the Victor Crowley?
Yeah. And then after some argument, because part of his plan is to go to Dylan's boat to get, some tools from Dylan's boat. We have this whole little argument back and forth about who should go to the boat. Austin wants to go to the boat because he wants to be the one to save his wife or girlfriend or whatever who doesn't want him to leave. She doesn't want him to leave, but he's like, I want to go. But Andrew's like, but Dylan's boat, he's the only one who knows where it is. Which is a fair point. But Dylan does seem scared. Dylan doesn't want to go, which, fair. There's a killer out there. but also I think it was Dylan who talks about having the tools. So this whole kind of scene, it was just characters kind of switched back and forth on what they believed they should do, which felt a little weird.
Yeah.
But yeah. And then around this time, Rose notices that Chloe is still breathing. And then at this point, Dylan decides that, hey, I'm going to go save her as long as I can get a kiss from you when I get back. And then Rose kisses him immediately and was like, hey, if you get back, we'll get married. Which, I'll be honest, once again, on so many ways, especially those first times I saw them, I shouldn't have liked this weird romantic story they put in with them. But it somehow almost worked for me. Like, it wasn't like the best romance story I've ever saw, but they were like a charming they had a charming chemistry that I did not expect.
Yes. Like, Dylan whips out this line that just like works.
Yeah.
And it just flips Rose, and she's like, all right.
Yeah, no,
I like
love
Dylan now. Like us. We like Dylan now.
Yeah. Just she realizes, oh, Dylan's a good character now. Okay.
Yeah.
And he's not doing these impressions. I mean, he's still an idiot. And there's a moment where she goes, why did I kiss that idiot? Kind of moment later. But, like, I feel like that could still be someone who likes someone. You could still be like, why do I like this idiot? You know? I mean, I'm sure there are people out there who feel that way about their significant other. Where was I? But yeah, so Dylan is about to go to save her, but he gets that kiss beforehand, and then they all freak out because there's actually a water snake ex machina to derail them for a second. There's a water snake. Austin goes, that's a water snake. Stop freaking out. And they stop freaking out.
The end.
And then Kathleen starts really freaking out, though. But that is, to be fair, once again, I didn't bring it up every time it happened because it's so minute. She has been kind of like complaining about not being able to breathe this whole time. And we've established she's definitely has some sort of like anxiety and stuff because she's taking a ton of, or at the very least, she typically takes anxiety medication, even if she should or not. So I guess in this situation, she's really freaking out. So she freaks out to the point where she runs out of the plane. And
Austin goes to chase after her and gets his scalp chopped off.
Because Victor Crowley is just waiting right on the top. He gets his scalp chopped off. Andrew catches it and gets freaked out and throws it onto Casey's face, which was kind of funny.
Yeah.
Austin falls over. His brain completely spills out, which, isn't realistic. Yeah, brains are connected, I know, but I didn't mind it. It was fine. It was funny.
Oh, yeah.
It was a funny little, haha, his brain fell out. Cool. That's it. Austin's dead
Well,
now.
I think what happened was, like, not only did he get scalped, but the top of his head got, like, cut off completely.
Lopped off.
So, like,
dude.
that part of his brain fell out where it got cut off.
I mean, his literal whole brain falls out. Like, it's full brain-sized.
It is?
Yeah.
I feel like it is like a lobe.
I mean, I'll have to rewatch it, and I'll let you know next week. I won't. But but I'm 99% sure I remember seeing his whole brain fall out, and I was like, all right, I'm fine with it, whatever. And I did see someone complain about it in a review I watched, and I was like, that's fair. I mean, that's fair. It is completely stupid. But maybe me and him saw it wrong, and you guys are right. Sounds like of the 4 people I know who've seen this movie, there's 2 different opinions on how much of his brain fell out.
It's really up for debate.
Yeah, it's 50-50 right now.
Up in the air.
But yeah. Then after we get that moment where we realize his head's chopped off and all that, we cut to back out to Kathleen, who is starting to call 911. But before she can say anything, Crowley rips her arm clean off, and then he shoves it up her vagina and out her mouth. Which is kind of cool to see, really gross, but also, I will say, impossible fun fact / thing, it might have not, the intention might have not been just gross out humor. Because I personally, knowing some of the stuff I know about, Felicia Rose's, I can't pronounce her name. Felicia Rose's biggest role in Sleepaway Camp, one of the most iconic kills in that movie is where she kills a girl, the bully girl, with a rolling iron, like a hair iron, like not the hair iron, why am I forgetting what it's called? Curling iron. A curling iron up the bully's vagina, off screen in that movie, to be fair, this is also not like, it's not like you see, but it is very much like you see a shadow of it happening in that movie compared to this movie where you see more but still don't see anything graphic. But yeah, I think there is a very good chance that having specifically Felicia Rose get killed with something going up her vagina was on purpose because of a callback to her most famous role. Which did, the second I saw it, I was like, oh, that's gross. And then I was like, but it was Felicia Rose. I think that might have, it made it slightly less gross to me because I was like, I think that might have been a callback, not just a gross joke. And to be fair, even if it was a gross kill joke, I'm still fine with it. It still got a reaction out of me, which is what a gross kill should get. I was like, oh, that's what all it should have been, and it did that. So no matter what, it was cool. But I think it might have had a deeper meaning. Then Casey starts to drown. She's really having trouble breathing now. Then Victor stomps Chloe's head in as Rose looks on in terror. And once again, it was a brutal head stomp. It's not the first time we've said a head stomp, but somehow they did it in a slightly different position on the head where it felt grosser. It was slightly higher up on the head, so not her whole head got smushed, just the top half, and it just
jaw up.
Yeah, and it
we see the chin remaining.
Yeah, and you also see goo stick to his foot as he walks away.
Good old head goo.
Apparently, she had a snot problem, just like the first girl.
Yeah, just like me right now.
Yeah, yeah.
Just goo.
Goo factor.
And then Crowley hops on the roof, which causes the plane to start sinking faster, causing Casey to finally actually drown. And what I write as a genuinely sad and non-violent yet extra painful to watch kill. It's slow, and we watch the air go out of her as she's just underwater holding Dylan's hand, which did lead to a joke at the very end of it, so it made it slightly. It was a nice cushion at the end of a painful moment, but it was still almost beautiful, which is weird to say in any of the Hatchet franchise, to have a beautiful kill. But the way she died was so tragically beautiful. And I was like, what is going on? This is not a slasher movie kill of any sort, let alone the over-violent Hatchet movies, as we just watch a girl suffocate or drown underwater and can't breathe. And we watch the bubbles slowly stop coming more because she's it's so long and prolonged, and it's genuinely art in the middle of this movie, which is weird. Because even though I like this movie, I would not describe this movie as an art movie. And yeah, so that's that kill. Then Sabrina, I wrote this whole scene is it's a little long, and I'm not gonna do it justice because a lot of mini exposition kind of moments happen during this. But we start with Sabrina destroying Andrew. She's just eviscerating him for being a has-been who never mattered, he's a nobody kind of thing. Before then, Rose then immediately puts her in her place, being you're just a talk show host people only care about you because you're pretty right now and you won't matter later. And then she also goes, but hey, I was here trying to capitalize on a bunch of dead people, so I guess we all deserve what we're getting. And I was like, okay, Rose, that was a beautiful speech out of nowhere.
Yes.
And Dylan's just I didn't do anything wrong.
Yes, that thing ended with Dylan going, I'm okay, I didn't do anything wrong. Which is, once again, at this point, I'm okay, I actually love this half of this movie. And it makes me angry how bad, made me even more angry, as you can tell by the beginning of this podcast, how bad the first half of this was, because I genuinely really enjoy this second half. But
that surprises me so much.
Oh, all right.
I mean, I can see why. I mean, I dug it too. Yeah. I just didn't expect y'all to like it because it seems.
I don't know if Chris did. We haven't heard Chris fully.
That's a good point. Yeah.
I'm the one who loves slasher films, and the second half is just a slasher film. So.
Well, it feels like it's not. I mean, well, we can get to that. Yeah. The speech is this therapy session in the middle of all
really powerful and almost borderline, but not quite undeserved. In I feel like any other movie that had up to this point, I would say, I don't know if it deserved to give that good of a speech. But the speech was just good enough, and like the way it all happened, and then it ended with a funny joke with Dylan. Like this whole scene, I just loved, and I didn't expect to love it, but I just kind of did. I thought it was funny / sad to hear the way Sabrina talked about Andrew, and then the way Rose roasted her right back, and then the way she like put herself down. Like it was just like it was not what I expected, especially from how insufferable I thought Rose was in her first scene. Like,
he changes, dude.
I mean, I see what you're saying, and maybe that is definitely what Adam Green was going for, but I still stand by, I shouldn't have hated, and was this, if we weren't doing this podcast, I would have turned this movie off in those first 30 minutes. So he still did do a bad job, like, with those first 30 minutes, because it was so bad, I hated it. Like, if we weren't doing a podcast on it, I definitely would not have made it to the point where this movie got good. But I did. So now I can go, I think it's, spoiler for the end, I don't even know, not that we ever really do that, I don't know if I could suggest someone else watch this movie, because it is such a weird, tonally different movie, a different, like, it is, I don't even fully know how I feel about it, because I still hate that first half so much. But we should keep going. And then Rose also kind of puts together the reason why this is happening. She realizes that the curse videos they had been watching must have brought Crowley back. There's also kind of a funny back and forth throughout this whole scene as she's figuring this out, of Dylan being like, maybe it's just every 10 years, like 3 times. And it was just like, he's just such a lovable idiot, where I was just like, you know what's funny? Ironically, he is so much more so in this movie playing a better parody of Dewey from Scream than he did in Scary Movie. In Scary Movie, they make him play a special needs person, compared to this movie where he's kind of playing that like lovable idiot Dewey is in that first Scream. That's just my thoughts, which is funny because he played the parody version of him before. I mean, to be fair, he is still playing a parody version of Dewey. He's stupider than Dewey ever was. But yeah. And then there was, this kind of ends after she kind of realizes with, like, as she kind of like, oh, it's all these YouTube videos. I thought a really funny joke about Dylan's own YouTube channel. He's like, oh, I got a YouTube channel, Chilling with Dylan. It has 86 followers. Well, 85 now, because I guess that Chloe followed it. To Chloe, yeah. It was just like, I love you, Dylan. You're an idiot, but I love you.
Chilling with Dylan. Dude, yeah.
Then, I guess because Victor threw it, it doesn't make sense, but Kathleen's body just kind of hits the window because it needs to so they can get the phone. I guess Victor said, here's the phone for a little bit. I want to let the plot keep going.
He doesn't know what the phone is.
Yeah, maybe he has thrown bodies at people before to scare them, so maybe that was Victor's intention. But they don't really even react to the body. They just kind of go like, phone. Okay, let's try to get the phone.
Yeah.
Kathleen's body hits the open window, and Rose grabs the phone, which grosses out Sabrina because that phone went through that woman. Which, I don't know if I'd be freaked out at that point. I wanted to just try to save my life, but I can understand that it is gross. Excuse me. But then they realize that they can't get into the phone because they don't know Kathleen's password. The phone did ring, and that's why they realized the phone was there and it still worked. But they didn't answer that call, so they can't do anything right now. But yeah, which actually, I didn't even think about this when I watched it the first time, but now as we're reading this off, is a flaw in this movie. Because all phones can call 911 even when they're locked.
Yeah. So unless they had a particular number that they really just needed to call besides the police.
Yeah, we want to call the military. It's like, why don't we start with 911?
Yeah.
Because they definitely could have called 911, but I guess none of them remembered that. Which, to be fair, I will give the movie credit. In the moment, I didn't remember it either. It's me going over it again right here where I go, wait a second. They could have called the cops.
Yes, they could have.
But they didn't.
No, they did not.
No, they did not.
Then, as they realize this, Crowley shows up, and he starts busting out all the windows just one by one, last one with his head going through it. And I'm just like, Victor. You
He looks
idiot.
pretty good in this movie.
Silly guy.
He looks better, I guess. I don't know. I think Victor Crowley, from every movie, I don't like his look. I don't like the design they chose for him. Like, I don't think any of them ever... Personally, I don't think any of his designs looked that bad for what they were going for. I just thought what they were going for was crap, if that makes sense. Like, I always felt like, okay, you're going for like an Elephant Man look. And I kind of always felt like they hit that. I just always was like, why does he have to look like Elephant Man? As we established in that first one,
that's fair.
It goes on with that thing that it feels like the horror trope of let's make the character special needs, which I guess to be fair to Hatchet, we find out in the second movie he's actually cursed, not just deformed, which I guess justified it. But yeah, he looks okay in this movie. I don't know. I didn't hate him. I didn't hate him in any of them though. I just never liked it, you know.
Sure,
but
he didn't look so rubbery to me.
That's fair. I don't know if I noticed rubber in this movie. I will say he definitely. I think he's honestly looked better each movie. I think, which makes sense. The more you learn how to do it, the more you're going to get better at it. But
that just makes perfect sense on Victor Crowley's weird cleft palate. Yeah.
Yeah. So Victor, he busts through the windows before walking away, and well, of course, it's a Hatchet movie, so he grabs his gas-powered belt sander. Woo! It's the opposite of the Elm Street house. When I see this, I get excited.
Revs it up, and it is gaseous.
I will say,
your face.
he revs it up just enough times where I wonder, like, is it not going to start? Is that going to be how they twist it on us this time? But then it starts. Yeah.
Is there no gas in the gas-powered
I was like,
belt
did
sander?
they not put gas in it for 10 years? That would make sense. But no, it has gas
it would.
Yeah, it has gas in it.
It's real stale.
Victor's got a Victor, all right? So yeah, he starts belt sanding the door with for a little bit, and they start moving away from that. But then he, I guess, just gets tired of doing the door for a little bit, even though later he decides to go back to the door and gets through it. So I don't know, he's running around. He's being Victor. He's Victoring up. He hops to the top. He belt sands the roof for a little while before he gets through the first panel. Belt sanders the wires, which turns the lights on, as we all know happens. Which, yeah.
Like that gremlin from the Twilight Zone.
It's stupid. This is one of those moments where I go, this is kind of what I'm talking about, where this movie is why, even at this point, it's not great. Because this makes no sense. Do I care in the moment? No, I go, that's okay, cool, lights are on, whatever. I'm having fun. I like this. I'm having fun at this point. But yeah, it's stupid. I can say it's stupid. There's no reason for the lights to come on. But they need to for the plot. So they come on. Yeah, and then after that, Dylan... Once the lights come on, Dylan gets this idea of how to kill Crowley with, pushing him through the plane's good engine. Which, fair, at least...
Blend him on up.
Probably won't end the curse, as we know how that works, but it should at least end the night. But yeah. And then, Dylan goes in there and he starts just mashing buttons. And then it somehow works for like a second, and he's like, "Oh, I did it!" And then it stops immediately. And it's like, "All right, okay, funny." And Dylan once again, if it was anyone but Dylan in this scene, I probably would have been mad at this comedy. But something about Dylan is just so charming that I love everything he does in this movie from the plane crash on. So I'm like, Dylan, all right, it's Dylan. So yeah, light turns on, turns off, and then while this is happening, Crowley starts to get into the cabin, but Sabrina does her only good thing in this whole movie. She comes up with the way to get them out of this, because I don't like Sabrina's character. She's just annoying, which she's supposed to be the naggy ex-wife. I get that she is written to be annoying, but I just was annoyed by her, which I guess credit to the character, but I'm not going to go back and go, no, I really liked what they did with Sabrina's character. I was just annoyed by it. I think that's what they wanted, so I guess credit to Adam Green, but it still annoyed me. But she comes up with the idea for them to swim out, which, hey, there's that hole where all the water was coming in. That makes sense. So they swim out, and Crowley pops in right after they leave, so they're free, but he's in there, and he's kind of freaking out. And at first, Andrew is kind of just getting ready to leave, but
Rose.
Rose is like, hey, we can't leave him. We have to save him. He's like, you're right. I'll distract him. She's like, I'm not leaving him either. Because, once again, in any other movie, I would say it would feel really shoehorned. But somehow, I felt the chemistry. So I was like, yeah, no, that makes sense. Rose loves him now. Okay, yeah, sure. All right, Rose loves him.
Dylan has earned that love.
I'm like, all right, I love both of them too at this point. So I'm like, yeah, no, I want them to be together. Oh. Yeah. Ugh. Yeah, so while this is happening, Dylan is, he starts getting the engine running, but Crowley just kind of growls at it as he walks out, because he heard, I almost call him Perry, like, that's exactly no, Andrew yelling. He heard Andrew yelling, Victor did, so Victor comes out to follow him, right as the engine gets started by Dylan, and Victor kind of just looks at the engine and growls, so he doesn't get like pulled in like you might have thought he was going to when they came up with the idea. So he just kind of walks past it, growling at it, and you're like, oh, I guess the engine idea didn't work. But maybe it does.
Engine stays on for...
Yeah, engine just keeps going. There's a lot of gas left in the plane. To be fair, I guess there still should be. They were only on a very small flight. There still could be gas in the engine. But they walk away. Sabrina and Rose then have a fight over the phone for some reason.
Yes,
Sabrina
for some reason.
really wants the phone, even though they've established it won't work. Unless maybe Sabrina was the one person who's like, I can call 911, but then forgot it the second she walked away with it because she doesn't do that. So yeah, she just fights over the phone. She wins the fight, and then we have a shot of Rose looking over at some like a bush and bramble area, and then we cut away to Victor showing up in that same area, and he looks right at that bush and bramble area, and he starts chopping it up, and you're like, oh no, is he gonna kill Rose? No, she's actually in the tree.
Like a raccoon.
Yeah, and she's crying because she's scared, and somehow now Victor Crowley has super hearing, so when her teardrop falls from her eye and hits a leaf, he freaks out, turns around, throws his hatchet in that direction, but, she's not in that direction, it was her tear falling, so, yeah, he doesn't kill her, but he kind of freaks out, and it's supposed to be a tense scene, because, I guess Victor Crowley has super hearing now, so we should be scared, because if he could hear a teardrop, he should be able to hear her breathing. But, he can't. He leaves.
He does not.
Yeah. He leaves and walks away. And then we have a scene where Dylan is trying to use the radio, but no one is answering him, and he just kind of keeps escalating who he is in a scene that I thought was hilarious. Like, first time he's like, I'm Dylan, and I work here, and we need help. And then...
And this is Captain
and then
Dylan.
Now I'm Captain, and then he was...
Five-star
general, and
Admiral Commandant Dylan.
He just kept getting bigger and bigger, and it's like, once again... I probably would. I'll admit it. If this was probably any other character, I probably would have hated it. But there was something about the charisma and charm of the actor's name,
Dylan.
Dave Sheridan. He really killed this
Dylan
role,
through and through.
And I loved him in this role. I loved Dylan here. And at the end, because we kind of cut back away to people running in the forest while he's doing this escalating thing. It's not like they just go immediately. I'm doing this now. It's not like it's one scene of him doing that. There's a bunch of nothing that happens in between them that I didn't even write notes for. But the last one, when he gets through, he finally gets an answer. Fun fact, that's Kane Hodder telling him to stop calling. So, Kane Hodder was able to just... I always like weird little facts like that. Like, oh, Kane Hodder is also playing the guy who says, it's a private channel. And that's it. Then Andrew shows up. And he comes back to get Dylan, and then we cut back to Dylan's boat, where Sabrina is at, and she gets a phone call from that same random person who was calling Kathleen before. I'm sure there's probably some sort of joke that I didn't catch, because I just feel like that's what this movie would have done. I feel like that's kind of Adam Green style. There was a joke in who was calling her. I didn't pay attention to who it was. So, but I'm feeling what I've seen from 4 movies of Adam Green's movies. That's his style of references at times. He'll throw a little crap in. So I'm sure there was a reference here to something.
That makes sense.
Because there was a moment where they mentioned Andrew being in a band earlier that we skipped over. It was during this scene where Sabrina roasts him, where his band was called Haddonfield, which is where Halloween takes place. I'm sure as much as a lot of it sometimes doesn't land, I genuinely believe Adam Green, for the most part, has plans for literally everything he does in his movies. They all feel so planned out. I feel like this phone call meant something. I don't know what it meant though. Maybe it was probably like the name from a character in Sleepaway Camp or something. That's probably what it was, but I don't know. I didn't pay attention to what it was. But she gets that call again, which outs her immediately to where she is, because it's this loud, obnoxious ringtone. And Victor shows up, and he does this weird thing where he, like, kills her off screen for the most part. Like, he snaps her, like, twists her head a little bit off screen, and then we just get a shot of her blood coming out of her mouth.
And eyes. Okay,
I missed the eye blood, but either way, it just felt like not as much gore as we normally would see if he messed up someone's head. And then we cut...
Not the head squish we were expecting.
Yeah, and then we cut to him, like, cutting off her head, also off screen, and we never see her head. And it's like, did the actress just not willing to do any sort of real special effects work? Like, she wasn't willing to do a head cast? Like, I don't know. It felt really out of place for this series to, like... Especially that character who, like I kind of established, I think was written to be an annoying character. You want a good death. With a
satisfying death.
Yeah, you want a good death for them.
Yeah.
You do not get it.
And you don't. She just kind of dies in this weird way that, like, both parts of it feel off screen. The head squish, like, you hear noises from behind, and then you see a little bit of blood in her mouth, and then she gets her head cut off literally off screen. So, whatever. Then Rose kind of gets to the hill, where, which is right next to the plane, so she sees Dylan and Andrew, and she's like she's about to get to them, but Crowley shows up right behind her and shoves her down the hill, and she does a little roll, and he's about to Hatchet trademark her when Andrew shoots him with a flare from the flare gun he found earlier. Once again, didn't mention it because it didn't matter when he found it, but he did. He found a flare gun. He shoots him, and we actually get a line here which does kind of establish why something happens later in this scene. He mentions that he was aiming for his balls when he hit him in the face, which establishes that he has bad aim, because it is important in a moment. Because then we get another scene where, once again, the weird thing where somehow the man couldn't write comedy in the first half in my mind, but wrote great comedy in the second half. We have this moment where Rose grabs the hatchet off the ground, and she says some line about being small and how it doesn't matter, and she goes to throw the hatchet, and it comes up so short because she had not enough power, and it was like, all right, okay, great. And then,
with all her might,
she's with all her might, despite her size, and she throws it, and it falls too short. And then we have once again, I think really well done comedy here, because we have the moment where, she's like, okay, Andrew, you do it. So he goes to shoot, and he misses completely, and you're like, dang it, they just can't get a win here. And then Andrew realizes what he's got to do, because I think Victor's about to pick up the hatchet again, and so he runs at him and kind of shoves him, but he doesn't quite get him into the engine, because this is all happening right in front of the engine. So he's holding himself out, because he's not going into that engine. And then we get, after saying a quick little, not directly a goodbye, but another little touching scene between Dylan and Rose, where he said,
I would have had your babies.
I would have had your babies, and boops her on the nose in the most adorable way, where you're like, oh, I love these two together. He runs past her to save the day and tackles Victor Crowley through the engine, and they are jelly now.
Turned into a blood mist.
Yeah, they are dead. Which I will say, weird. Once again, I don't like to. I won't even bring it up. Actually, forget it. Just move on. Don't know what I was going to say. Then the credits start to go, and the movie's over. But is it? Because we have, I don't know if you even saw this. You might have turned off when the credits started, but there's a mid-credit scene. There's a mid-credit scene where we get a kind of, honestly, a little too long news recap, which is kind of we're getting a news recap of everything that's happening, and we kind of find out about how, these two people survived, and one of them's Andrew Young, and then we kind of go back a little bit further, and we find out, wait, who's watching this? Who's watching this news report? That's right, it's Mary Beth. She is confirmed to still be alive because she is watching it, and she goes over and grabs her shotgun and says, I'm not done with you, MF or something like that, because she's got to have curses. That's her character at this point. She's just a little cursey girl. She's a little 4-foot curse girl.
4 foot.
But yeah, so she's not dead. And I guess there could be a sequel with her still coming after Victor.
Yeah,
if this
10 years
movie,
down the line.
if this
we'll
movie,
have another one in 2027.
I mean, yeah, if
There we
this
go.
movie did well, which I don't know if it did, because most people probably turned off after those first 30 minutes. Because it's time for our final thoughts.
5-minute mark, they probably turned it off.
It's time for my final thoughts, which I have reiterated ad nauseum at this point. But the first 30 minutes of this movie are literally some of the worst movie I have personally ever seen, in my opinion. Like, it was one of my least favorite viewing experiences I've ever had. Like, I was genuinely going like, this might be the worst movie I've ever seen, as we were getting through those first, 30 minutes. One of the many times I paused to take notes and screamed at the stupidity I just saw on screen. But yeah, then the plane crashes, and I love everything after that. Is it good? Probably not. But it is completely passable and really enjoyable at times, and there's a couple characters that, I'm sorry, even if it was intentional and he had great intentions with it, magically become interesting characters the second the plane crashes when they were insufferable 3 seconds earlier. And I love so much of what happened after that. It's not good, but it's fun, and I really enjoyed it. I'm really happy that last hour was there, because now I don't hate this movie. I have mixed feelings on this movie. I don't know how to feel. I really don't. I really genuinely have no idea how to feel. That's my thoughts.
Okay.
It's your turn, Chris. Oh, Chris is yawning. Isaiah, you go first for once.
Oh, seriously?
Yeah.
Okay. I got mixed feelings too, but they're not the same ones.
He loved the first part and hated the second.
I didn't. I mean, neither of those are really true. I certainly like the first part better than y'all. I didn't loathe it. But I am surprised that y'all like the second part so much, because to call it stale seems a little bit harsh, but we're used to some more action in Hatchet movies, the woodland chases and everything. And we're trapped in this plane, whatever you call it when you're on a plane, the part where the people
Plane
are.
cabin.
Yep.
Plane cabin. And we're trapped in the plane cabin for quite a while they try and pendulum swing between the tension of we got to get out and we've got to stay in. And they keep that up. And to me, it felt like, as a pure, like, in the caveman part of the brain, waiting for action, like, okay, I'm ready for them to get chased through the woods now. And I'll totally acknowledge that's not the rubric for whether or not a movie's good, even a slasher movie. So, I'll acknowledge that's not that substantial the movie's quality. I think what made it seem so different after that point was that was where the conflict finally began. And the setup just took a while, but if you think about it, that whole first point before the plane crashes, we're learning these characters' names and their stories that lead them up to this point, but there's really no conflict yet. There's no Crowley, So it's not that the plane crashes per se; it's that, like, it crashes and Crowley is revived, and now we have the Victor Crowley movie that we've been waiting to begin. And I don't think that's a bad thing. That the beginning happens kind of in the middle, because our introduction to these characters isn't hasty. So I do really appreciate that they had dimension and they changed over the course of time. My only problem actually is in the second half, it's a little stale, in my opinion, to keep him in the cabin for so long. And I guess my primary criticism, if I had to really pick one, that stood out the most, is that Andrew, all throughout the movie, is introduced as this character who really, really needs to redeem himself. People think he's a murderer. He escaped from the last movie in an act of cowardice that he covered up that comes to light. And all of that seems to really, like, okay, that's weighing on Andrew now. What's he going to do? And at the end, they've got him toe-to-toe with Crowley. He pushes him into the turbine, except he doesn't. And somebody else does. And all of a sudden, he's kind of right back where he began. And he seems to be the only one that doesn't develop. These other characters get to all of a sudden snatch his hero arc away from him. And I mean, I don't like to, like, treat movies as, fix-me-ups, but I would have liked to have seen Andrew kill Victor Crowley, because I think that would have tied up the conflict that they had set up all along with. He's accused of being a murderer. He's burdened with a cowardly story that he dressed up and hid. It would have been nice to see that reversed and see some redemption. But that's just me. So
really good point that I didn't think about, but I get that. No, that's fair. That also means Dylan would have lived, which would have made me happy. So
yes, live Dylan, yeah.
But then the only problem with that is, obviously, with the mid-credits scene, Adam Green wanted a sequel. And then he has to think of a different character for Perry Shen to play. It's too hard.
Like a fifth Perry Shen character.
Well, only fourth, because he played Andrew twice.
Oh, right, yeah.
Now he gets to play Andrew a third time, if they make another one, which I don't think they're
in another 10 years when he's 50.
Yeah.
Something.
Kane Hodder is already like 60 plus. They're not making another one.
I was talking about Perry Shen.
Yeah, I'm just saying though, they can't make another one because you can't make this without Kane Hodder, and Kane Hodder's getting too old.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah. I don't know if I have a whole ton to add that hasn't been said already. That first 30 to 40 minutes of the movie is pretty rough. What it's trying to do, it does not do very well. I kind of like the establishing of Andrew Young as like this potential murderer, which like makes sense. You know, he's the only survivor. It makes sense that some people are like, well, maybe he wasn't a survivor. But then everything they do with him kind of thereafter in the first 30 to 40 minutes is just like, bleh. I'll agree that I liked where the comedy went in that post-plane crash. But I also think I do agree with Isaiah in that the movie feels kind of stale just because the lack of a change of scenery. They're stuck in this plane cabin, and you also kind of, as a consequence, feel stuck. And it also takes a while for things to get a little bit more exciting. Aside from, Victor popping in to say hi through the windows. So even like after the plane crash, it takes a while for like the slasher part of the movie to start slashing. As far as Andrew Young's character, honestly, I think it makes sense for him, like to not have this redemption, because he is so deeply like fearful of Victor Crowley. Like, as much as he wants to overcome him, he also, saw him like rip somebody in half through an ambulance. So I think that's natural to not be like, yeah, I can't do anything about that. I tried tackling him into a plane engine, but that didn't work.
I'd also add for what Rose said earlier, Andrew didn't deserve redemption. Just like, I actually think, like, more I'm thinking about it, like, I think, as much as, yes, I would love if Dylan to survive, and yes, everyone should have probably died in that case, but, like, he was the one who actually had any sort of, I don't know, I feel like him being the purist made it mean more when he was the one who actually had to save the day. Both of them tried. Both of those characters that she established were flawed humans who don't deserve redemption, weren't the ones who were able to save the day. It was the guy who was just a lovable dork. He was able to the one to save the day because he was the one who wasn't flawed. I mean, yeah, don't get me wrong. That's a less satisfying ending if you're invested in Andrew Young, and which is fair. But like, I'd argue,
but Dylan died the true hero's death,
and like, I'd argue
he is the people's champion.
I'd say Andrew didn't deserve to die hero's death.
Yeah,
especially because once again, like I think Isaiah mentioned throughout the movie, Andrew wasn't that well written of a character throughout this movie, so it's not like he had like really built up a character arc where he deserved redemption. He was just kind of there, flip-flopping on if they should leave or not, because
he was just trying to survive another night.
Yeah,
and that was pretty much it.
And you know what? He did. He is the ultimate final girl. He's done it again.
So did I enjoy most of this movie? No. Did I enjoy parts? Yes. Does it outweigh the parts that I didn't enjoy? I don't think so. But there's parts that I really wanted to like. Unfortunately, there was just like 40 or 50 minutes that preceded it that if I wasn't doing this movie podcast, I would have turned off in the first 5 minutes when I saw snot pouring out from an actress's face that didn't look like snot at all. So yeah.
It's fair. But yeah, we have mixed feelings, and that's good. It's good that we're different people. People probably wouldn't like this if we all had the exact same opinion.
Yes. Welcome to the Echo Chamber podcast.
Yeah. We already are, another 3 white guys with a podcast. It's a good thing we at least are 3 different white guys with a podcast. But yeah, this has been our discussion of Hatchet. Overall, even with my mixed feelings on this movie, I still think the Hatchet franchise as a whole was enjoyable. I really enjoyed, in general, Adam Green's vision. I know Chris is going to be more 50-50 on this because he didn't like the second one, he didn't like this one, and that's fair. But I liked 3.5 out of these 4 movies. So I think overall that's a pretty good record for my taste. Especially with what we've covered so far, which isn't a lot. We've only covered, the Freddy versus Jason arc, but those movies, both of those were longer with more bad ones. So
yeah. I was going to say, really, all we have to do is wait for 5 or 6 more Hatchet movies to come out, and then I'm sure our opinions will change on the franchise as a whole.
I know also will say something that we kind of hinted at last week that I do still stand by. This movie shouldn't exist. That's my closing thoughts on this franchise. Is those first 3 movies were a perfect trilogy. And
yes, that does have to be
the story they were trying to tell. Yes,
and then
I forgot. Yeah,
and then then they made this movie because actually, to be fair, I will say part of the reason why Adam Green, this is like from once again IMDb trivia, so take it with a grain of salt, but it did seem genuine from the way they were like talking about some interview they read. It specifically was Wes Craven's death made him really want to continue his work because he realized, wait, this is the thing that people love me for in the horror world, and he loves the horror world, and he's like, I want to be, like a Wes Craven. I want to keep making work that people like. And I think also specifically, crazy enough, George Romero was one of the people who encouraged him to make another Hatchet film. Like, you're doing it in honor of Wes Craven, and George Romero tells you to do it, who then sadly died 30 days before they announced this movie, I believe George Romero did. So you never even got to see him make another movie. But I guess closing and more just, I'm gonna keep rambling because I do genuinely love this franchise. Surprisingly, I didn't really expect to love it, but I also love the person of Adam Green. Hearing him talk, the passion that man had when he made that first Hatchet and that second, he loves the horror community and wanted to give them something, and I think he did a pretty darn good job. It's not perfect. There's mistakes for sure, but I respect the crap out of him. One, for just doing it. He did it. He made a horror movie. He made 4 of them. He's made more too because he also made a Frozen one we talked about, and I'm sure he's done maybe 1 or 2 others. But he's done a lot, and I respect the crap out of him and the passion he has for this, and I appreciate it. But next week, we're gonna still not be hitting any of those big franchises quite yet. We still need a little bit more of a break before we jump into one of those big ones. Hey, Future Austin here, cutting in real quick to make a little quick change/announcement. Initially, we had recorded us announcing that our next franchise was going to be the I Know What You Did Last Summer franchise, but that's another slasher franchise, and Chris is tired of slasher franchises, as you could see. And I wanted to give him a little break. There's a lot more slasher franchises that are big deals that are going to come up, and I Know What You Did Last Summer will be one of them. Honestly, it's probably better that we cover that after Scream anyway, because it's such a post-Scream movie anyway. But that's not really neither here nor there. The question is, what are we doing over the next 3 episodes if we're not covering those? Well, we're going to be doing a Player's Choice event, as I'm calling it, which is each of the Horror Boys are going to choose a horror movie, a standalone movie that we probably wouldn't have got to cover for a while if we were sticking to franchises. And I'm going to be going up first, and I'm going to be choosing a movie that I felt really made a lot of sense after I made a reference to it in our Hatchet 3 episode, and that will be Fulci's 1979 Italian classic Zombie, also known as Zombie 2 when it was released in Italy, but we'll get into why there's 2 different names for it on the episode. But yeah, that's what we're going to be watching next week. It's a classic from a really great Italian director who we should probably do a whole arc on Fulci, but that's not what we're doing right now. But yeah, next week, Zombie. Tune in. It'll be great. Let's head back to the rest past us for that outro. Yeah. I'm Austin, and I'm not ready for that part yet. First, I'm going to do the outro plugs like I'm supposed to. We are available on all the podcast apps you can think of, as long as they're the 3 main ones. And if you like us there, hey, please leave 5-star reviews. I know it's, if you don't, maybe only like us 4 stars, but if you like us even 4 stars, please give us a 5-star just because it's such an algorithm-based thing. If you like us, leave a review. If you don't like us, just leave, please. Don't give us a bad review, please. It would literally just hurt us. Unless you really hate it that much that you want the podcast to be hurt, just leave. That's fine. But yeah, what else? Patreon.com/horrorboys. I've been Austin, joined by Chris and Isaiah, and we will see you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.